Welcome to the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Gissal. This podcast is dedicated to helping you create a life that sets your soul on fire. I believe that is truly possible for everybody, but you have to be willing to do a few things. You have to be willing to let go of your past conditioning. You have to be willing to break free from societal norms. And you have to be willing to get really curious about your life and how you can start to look at it differently. Each week, we will hear stories from people who have done exactly this. People who chose to disrupt the life path they were on, go against the grain, and share the lessons and perspective shifts they had to make along the way. Every episode is committed to not only inspiring you and connecting you with other amazing humans, but actually giving you the tools you need to use this information in your own life so that you continue to evolve and reconnect with your highest self. Are you ready? Let's have some fun. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. I am so excited to be sharing with you the first guy on the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. I think it's so fun because Johnny comes in with a very unique perspective on a lot of different things. So Johnny, let me tell you a little bit about him. Johnny Elasser is a former Special Operations U.S. Army Ranger with 4 combat tours between Iraq and Afghanistan and another 5 years protecting the U.S. ambassador to Iraq in Baghdad. Johnny has seen the field of masculinity through extreme alpha perspectives and knows the trials and tribulations the toughest men deal with day to day. Johnny's mission is to help men find strength in developing masculinity to become consistent with who they are and not what society expects them to be. Johnny has shifted his fight to advocating and supporting alpha males in finding their own masculinity and purpose as a man into today's society. He is the host of a top-rated podcast, The Art of Masculinity, where he provides insights from himself and others on how to have men live their best lives through authenticity, vulnerability, and credibility. Okay, full disclosure, the first time I recorded this, I actually said, as you can see, Johnny and I have a lot in common, which is pretty comical because obviously I have not been a U.S. Army Ranger. I have not. And what I really mean is that our missions have a lot in common. And so I think that it's going to be really fun for you to listen to this episode to get the different perspectives, the male perspective, the female perspective. We talk about everything from being an alpha male and what that really actually means to discussing the difference between codependency and partnerships, all the way into communicating and how to get started on this journey. And so I'm really excited to dive in with you. I think you're going to take a ton from this episode, and make sure you hang in at the end because I do go really into depth on the codependency versus partnerships and the fear-based love compared to, well, there's no fear-based love. Fear versus love, and give you some action steps. And I think it's going to be something you'll find really interesting. So let's get started. Let's do this. Okay, Johnny, I am so excited to have you because you're actually the first guy that on the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. So welcome.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. This is a huge honor. Seriously.
This is a big moment. It's a big moment for everybody.
I'm just taking this in.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm really pumped to have you because I do think it's so important to have different perspectives, and we'll kind of get into some things here in a minute, but I like to just start out with a few rapid fire questions so that the listeners can get to know you a little bit better. You might get to know yourself a little bit better and all of that. So are you in for that?
Absolutely. I do a lot of good slow fire answers to rapid fire questions.
Okay, good. Then this is going to be perfect for you. So first things first is, where are you from and where are you currently living?
So I am from Fresno, California. It's the really large agricultural city within California. It's right in the middle. And my wife and I just moved to Charleston, South Carolina. So we're in our new home now.
Yeah, what you can see if you're watching the video, you can see in the background, and it's beautiful. It's what you would picture in where you're living. It's so fun. I love it. Okay, so you obviously have a wife. Any other pets or kids or any family that we should know about?
Yeah, so we have 3 fur babies now. My wife just brought looking over at two of them right now. My wife brought us a small kitten. She's about 10 months old from Costa Rica. And then we have our two dogs. One's 10, one's 11, and they're amazing puppies. And then since we moved out here, I inherited two ducks, and my wife wants us to get chickens. And we have a little piggy on the way. She was just born. We're going to go pick her up in for like the first week of May in your old neck of the woods in Michigan. And so her name will be Lucy. So we're going to have like a little farm out
here. I love it. Lucy the pig. And this is funny because Johnny and my husband have something in common where their wives just bring home cats. And that was how we actually got Leroy, as I brought him home and Andrew was like, don't you dare bring that cat home. I don't want a cat. I don't want a cat. And I was like, yeah, okay. Wink, wink. And then he came home to like a litter box. And the only thing that sold Andrew on having a cat was that when he came in and the kitten knew to go to the bathroom in the litter box, he was like, wait, you don't have to teach it how to do that. It just does that. And I was like, yeah, they just like know instinctively to go in the litter box. And he's like, maybe I can get down with the cat.
Well, it's funny because Luna, our cat, learned that really fast where the litter box is. But since she's kind of grown up for the first 10 months of her life in the jungle, she now will find a house plant, a big one, and pee underneath it like she's in the jungle. She doesn't do it very often. She only did it in our bedroom like one time, but things you don't think about when you bring a cat that actually did live outside in a jungle space where they look at trees as peeing underneath them.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't luckily Leroy was 6 weeks old when I picked him up off the side of the road. So he didn't have those tendencies quite yet. So that's such a funny story. Luna and Leroy. I feel like they need to meet. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Where is your favorite place to travel?
I actually just had this question the other day on a podcast as well, and I love this. I want to give two for different reasons. So if you'll permit me, I'll give two. My first one, I allow it. My first one is Australia. I absolutely love Australia. I spent a lot of time on the eastern coast of Australia and just absolutely fell in love with like Brisbane. And then I love Slovenia. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous country. It's like in the middle of a lot that's going on in Europe, some other beautiful places. It's centrally located to travel to those places, but it's this really beautiful area that not too many people know about. And it's just kind of slow paced, sleepy, but absolutely stunning, great food, actually really good wine, beautiful, beautiful place. So those are my two favorites.
They both sound like places I need to go. You know what's funny is every time I ask this question, no one ever says anything in the United States. It's always like some other country, which maybe, like I'm sure we just take our country for granted sometimes, but that's so fun. I'll have to check those out. So on the same ish note, what is someplace you've always wanted to travel?
Ooh, someplace I've always wanted to travel is definitely Ireland. It's definitely not a place I've been, but obviously my heritage, my ancestors are from that location predominantly. And so I would absolutely love to go there one day and just experience it. Most of actually Braveheart, the movie, even though it was, took place in Scotland, was actually filmed in Ireland, majority of that movie. Absolutely beautiful country. And I just wish I could go and see it at some point because it's not densely populated and you can just still see a lot of the landscape for what it is.
So good. I feel like I need to take you to trivia one night. Like you'll have like these like random facts. It's gonna be like, I wonder how many of these you will shoot at us. So now I know when that question gets asked, I'm like, that's a trick question. It wasn't there in Scotland. Yep. What is your favorite book?
Oh, good question. I love this. I have quite a few books that I really love, but I have to go back to the one book that started me on my own path of development and understanding of who I am. And that was Excuses Be Gone by Dr. Wayne Dyer. Absolutely amazing book. I recommend it for anybody, but I really recommend it for men because the way that he writes, it's kind of like a slap in the face, but he does it in a way that's like not like challenging you to where you get offended. It's like a slap in the face of like, oh man, I really am doing those things, aren't I? Like that's kind of how he writes. It's amazing. But it's a really great book. It started me on my path, and it'll always have a deep place in my heart and always have a deep place in my favorites for sure.
I've never read that book. I'm gonna have to check it out. I love it. Like, I think sometimes you guys just do need a little slap in the face by
Yeah.
a book. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Wait,
Not
wait a
in
second.
that way.
That took a dark turn.
Not in that way. Come on. Okay. All right. Last question is, oh no, I have two more. What do you have the most fun doing?
Oh man. The most fun doing, I would have to say 100% emphatically is like whitewater rafting / kayaking. Absolutely love it. I did something really cool in New Zealand, which was called sledging. And they basically put you on like it's like a plastic, almost thick boogie board. So it's not very long. It just goes under like your torso. And then it has two metal pieces that come out of the side, and you just hold on to them with your handles as handles. And you literally are basically going down whitewater rapids and waterfalls, like small waterfalls, with like a boogie board, this plastic boogie board. And that's what they call sledging. So you actually paddle it with your legs like you're swimming. Really, really fun time. So anything that's in a river that's white water, like literally just absolutely love it. It's great.
You're such a guy. This is like, that sounds so, like in my head, I instantly go to that sounds so dangerous. Like, I'm like, you want to do what? I remember we went whitewater rafting. We went on a camping trip. It was my Andrew and I, his mom and dad, and my mom and dad. Funny story. We actually ended up having to sleep in the same tent, which was like a 4-person tent as my parents, because we forgot one of the tents at home. And yeah, like, not awkward at all. But we went whitewater rafting and it was so fun. Like we had like the best guide, but then like, this is how my mind works. And I'm working on this is like afterwards you get done and you're like, I could have died. Like there were scary moments on that. Like it's just so funny, but that's awesome. There's something about a river. I like to mostly look at the river or like wade in it, but these other things sound fun, I guess.
I love being in them. One of my goals eventually is I'd love to get like, certified as doing like whitewater kayaking. So they have like class certifications so you can kind of go and go down like different ones. But yeah, that's like a huge goal of mine because it's so much fun to me. It's just like you're by yourself with the river and you got to paddle in a freaking plastic boat and you're just going down this thing having fun. So.
It's so funny because you're like, that sounds like so much fun to me. I'm like, that sounds like my nightmare. Like being alone in a plastic boat by myself, where getting like tossed around by the rapids. You're gonna be like one of those guys that's like doing like the flips in the in the water, where you're like, I'm like, you shouldn't be upside down in the plastic boat going down the river. That doesn't seem right either. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see the videos of this. Okay. All right, last question. And what was one of your favorite things to do as a kid?
Oh man, I was actually two things. One, I love sports, so I love any sport, and I've been blessed with the fact that like I can actually I'm pretty decent at any sport, even the first time I touch it, just because I've just very coordinated. So that's something that I really love about myself. But I loved sports. But when I was a kid, probably the funnest thing I can remember doing growing up was climbing trees. And we used to climb some big trees, my cousins and I and my brother, and we just sit up at the top. Like, I just remember just shooting the shit for like hours. And then like our parents knew if they didn't see us in the yard or out in the street playing a sport or something like that, they knew we were up in the trees. And my aunt and uncle had this massive tree that had massive branches to climb up to the top like almost every day and just hang out. It was so cool.
I can see you, like you and Andrew, doing that now. Like when we come to visit you, I can totally see like you guys at the top of the trees chatting, figuring out all the world's problems.
We're just going to be... Oh, we've already solved a few of them, but we're going to definitely... Andrew and I are going to put some zip lines out here and just... That'll be fun.
That'll be good. See, now we know. I can actually see you and Taylor also climbing to the top of a tree and having conversations. So I feel like you should maybe put this back into your life in some way or another.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. I hadn't even talked about, that's the first time I've ever mentioned that on a podcast, but it's really funny because now bringing it back, I'm like, wow, we really did love climbing trees. It was a lot of fun. Although I'm a lot bigger now. So being over 200 pounds, these trees need to sustain a little more weight on their branches, I think.
Well, maybe we don't climb as high now since like gravity is going to pull a little bit harder.
Oh, here comes Stacy coming out. Well, maybe we just think about climbing trees now.
No, I want you to climb the tree. I just want you to go to like the first like 3 branches. Maybe not the top. Oh, okay. All right. Well, that was so fun. Thank you for entertaining all those questions. So, all right, I want to dive in, and I want to say the thing that anybody who knows you or anybody who watches this is going to think. Are you too good to be true? And what I mean by that is, from the outside looking in, you're like this rugged, wild man. Like, see what I did there? You can talk about that at the end. But you're also like you're sensitive. You're willing to read books like the book Flow, which, for those of you who don't know, this is actually about understanding a woman's menstrual cycle and how to work with it. It's not made for men. Well, it can be, I guess. And like, but you're more than happy to like talk about your feelings and express emotions. So like, what gives? Because has it always been like this? Like, let's just start there.
No, this is such a great question. And no, it hasn't always been that way. Before I even started on this journey, I was the typical alpha male because of my background. I was special operations. I protected the U.S. ambassador to Iraq for many years. And I spent about the first, 10 years of my young, like late teens, early 20s in the Middle East, in and out of the Middle East. So I had this huge chip on my shoulder that I was like a man's man and like I'd done all these hard things. So I was not this guy before, right? And not that I was scared of him, but it was just the fact that at that time, that was not what I thought a man was supposed to be, right? I was under the same impression that many men are under these days. But when I realized that I needed to start going down this path for my own health, my own mental health, but also just to truly understand who I was and my imprint on this, planet, I realized that I had to look a little deeper and I had to start having those real conversations. And I had to stop being scared of that because it didn't make me any less of a man. So when I finally, I had a lot of confidence built into me from what I used to do, but I had to take that confidence and adjust it because of the fact that I was no longer doing that job. And that confidence was based a lot about what my background was. But now I've developed the confidence in just simply the man that I am. And it doesn't make me feel vulnerable or weak to have these types of conversations with anybody because I don't feel less than, because I am confident with what I bring to the game. It's understanding that I'm capable of a lot and I'm confident in those capabilities, and to be inquisitive too. Like, it doesn't make me any less of a man to be inquisitive. So I didn't start here. I had to develop it. But as soon as I developed that confidence and I developed that comfort with who I was, that I was able to actually learn so much more because I was open to it. And then that made me understand a lot more. It boosted my intellect, my vocabulary. It boosted my emotional intelligence. It boosted everything that I had because I started being willing to learn and open to those types of teachings.
So good. So one thing do you feel like there is a difference between having almost like this, I don't want to call it a false confidence, but it's almost like a confidence that is it's an outward expression of confidence, right? Where like, versus like having like a true inner confidence of like, do you feel like there's like a difference between those things?
Oh, huge, huge. I think so many men, I think there's a couple issues here and two things that I'll talk about. One is the false alpha. Like, there's a lot of people out there who want to pretend like they're really alpha males and they're not. And I don't, hey man, tough love's tough love, but you're not. Most of you guys that think you're an alpha, you're truly not. What happens is many men that want to sit there and push out this version of an alpha male and show people are actually really insecure men who have not made it through their boyhood past, right? And so a lot of these guys really when they try to exude that they're an alpha male and try to establish that in that external way that you're talking about, a lot of that is just protection for their insecurities. And that's their ego saying, you have to do this because if not, people are going to see through you and think that you're weak because he's not actually secure with who he is. So he actually truly has no internal confidence on who he is. Most of these men, and anybody that's triggered by this, go journal about it because that's where you need to start. My wife says that if you're triggered by it, go journal. Don't be mad at me. Be mad at the fact that you haven't done the work to say, wow, man, where am I and who am I as a man? And so, yes, there's that level of this externalization of confidence to make me show Stacy I'm confident. But true men who are confident don't have to do that. True men that are confident, when you said the way that you see me as a man in this world today, I do those things. I don't try to one up anybody. I love having conversations. I love asking questions, but I do that because the fact that I truly am confident internally and nothing really shakes me outside of that because I'm not great at everything. I'm not perfect. And I know those things, but I'm confident in the person that I show up as and who I'm aligned with. So that's where a lot of guys get it wrong. The other thing is the second part of that is I think society has created a very false identification of what an alpha male is. I've rubbed shoulders with many true alphas in this world, and they are not what people think, and they are not what society has conditioned us to think what an alpha male is. Not even close. These guys tend to be very humble. They tend to be very they have humility. They're self-deprecating in a lot of ways, not out of arrogance, but they're self-deprecating in a way that just they're having fun and they don't mind if a joke is on them. They laugh, they cry, they have emotional conversations, they're willing to open up and be vulnerable. They're all of these things, and a lot of times you wouldn't even be able to pick them out in a bar or a restaurant. That's the funny thing. And these true alpha guys are the guys that can hold their own in any capacity, whether it be intellectually, physically, any of that kind of stuff. They can hold their own in it, and they're not scared to be in any situation. They're highly adaptable. Those are the true alphas. They're able to adapt to any situation. It doesn't intimidate them because they're confident in how they show up in that. And you don't know them because they don't tell you that they are. You know them because of the fact that their energy, the way that they are really involved and present, the way that they don't have to promote themselves. Those are the guys, truly the alphas out there that, you wouldn't want to get in a physical altercation with them, and they're still the same guy that'll have a great vulnerable conversation with you. So those guys are out there, but that's the second part. I think society's created a false identification of what an alpha male is, for sure.
Yeah, and I love all of that, and I will say that Johnny definitely puts himself in situations like, I don't know, 7 weeks ago in Atlanta, he hung out with 4 women for an entire day, and so he puts himself into some scary situations that can go anywhere. But it's like it's just your presence makes it very fun and very enjoyable, and you don't there's never you don't put that out there at all. So everybody loves to be around Johnny because it is like that truly is the energy that you put out, and you make everybody feel welcome and heard and cared for. And you don't try to do that. It's just really who you are. And because you've become so in touch with that. So I wanted to jump back to something that you said, because this is something that I have been seeing come up a lot, is that that going back to fear and insecurity, because something that I'm hearing and I have heard a lot from, so Johnny and I actually, we do a very similar thing, but I tend to work with women and he tends to work with men. And so it's really fun. But as I have realized that as I work with women to really figure out who they are and strip away their masks and step into trusting themselves again and giving them having that true internal confidence, is some of the men in their life struggle with this. This is like, and I'll be totally honest. I talked about this yesterday, is that like Andrew struggled when I started to have this, like this internal, I don't like to say, it's not a sense of I don't need you. Like that's not it at all. It's more of a just like I know my worth as a human being and I am not afraid to show that. And he was like, I love this woman that you're becoming, but she kind of scares the shit out of me. And he was willing to admit that and have a conversation around it. And so we could move through it. But for a lot of women, there is this, the men in their life they're so hell bent on like showing that they're superior in some way, whether that be a physical thing or this or that. It's just like they're very like, well, I'm obviously I'm superior, and it's just kind of interesting. And I would just love to know, like, where do you think? I mean, it obviously stems from the insecurity, but I think at the end of the day, like really confident men don't feel as if they have something to prove. And I don't know. I would just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is a great subject to kind of go on. A lot of men out there, I don't know that it's superiority. A lot of men out there truly so socially we're conditioned for what's called hegemonic masculinity, right? And then our underlying effect is that the fact that Western civilization has been based on the patriarchy, right? So the men become the dominant feature. And so while we can relate that to superiority, I don't think necessarily the mindset of men is for superiority, but I think the mindset of men is for control of the household, right? And wanting to show that they're the protector and the provider, right? So when you become independent, what happens is men are terrified of this because the fact that you no longer are codependent on them, and their self-worth as a man in Western society is to be the provider, the protector, and everything else for the household. So what's happening is it's making them insecure because no longer the role that they were told they were supposed to have is available to them. So now what's terrifying is they don't know where to go after that. Like that's where because they were codependent on you relying on them, right? That validated who they were as men. So when they're codependent on that and you break that off and say, whoa, 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 bro, no, I'm independent and you can be independent and we're choosing to make a life together. That's what we're doing. Nobody's codependent here, right? They don't understand that because they don't know who they are independently anymore. And maybe they never knew who they were independently. So a lot of it becomes the social constructs of what we've been preconditioned to hold in us as men because of the sociological effects of how we've been taught what a man is supposed to be. So, when you dive down deep into the sociology of things, you realize that, wow, men were really conditioned from young ages, our most malleable ages where we're having all this stuff imprinted on our subconscious. We are trained so young on what a man is supposed to be that when we get to adulthood, which now this is what's getting guys in a lot of scary situations with insecurity, is you women are being promoted to be independent, and you guys are finding your place now as strong, independent boss ladies who are creating lives for themselves and no longer are the old constructs for masculinity serving men. It's actually falling apart and they don't know where to go. They don't know how to look inside themselves because on top of that, they've been told that if they look in their emotions and if they acknowledge those and try to look inside, that they're weak and beta males, right? So now the one thing that would help them, they've already been preconditioned subconsciously to think is wrong.
Oh my gosh, such a vicious cycle, right? And it makes you like, I say this all the time. I have so much compassion for men in this aspect because you guys truly are brought up to be the provider, you take care of the family, you don't show emotion, you don't even admit that things are hard. Like that's just like that's not your role, like you said. So I want to dig in a little bit because I love we've had this conversation in the past, and I think it's an important thing to touch on the codependency versus like having a partnership in your relationship. And I think I can talk about this because I know for me, what I used to be very codependent on Andrew. Andrew was like when I married him, in my head, I was second fiddle. It was like kind of the Andrew show, and I was just there. And because I didn't know my own worth, and I think that since then I've grown so much, and now I can sit there and say like codependency for me was, and so I'd love to hear your thoughts, but codependency for me was believing that I wasn't like he made me whole, right? Or I was a lesser person without him. And where codependency, and I mean, there's a lot of other things. I also counted on him for my happiness, right? Like if he left to go on a trip, it was like, well, you're leaving, you're choosing other things over me, which is not the case at all. And I understand that now, but that is what created this codependent relationship, which at the end of the day, like I couldn't stand on my own 2 feet. But I think that it kind of goes in both directions. So, yeah, I would just love to hear your thoughts on like how that type of relationship is just going to end up, it's going to be a struggle.
It's great that like you're able to identify that. We even have a saying like it's okay to say, "Oh, this is my better half," right? And when people say this is my better half, they're saying that I'm only half of a person. So you've already said that you are not independent, and you've admitted codependency. And so for when we talk about this, like being half of a person without somebody else, or these, this codependency, the thing that we have to realize is that if you didn't find yourself before a relationship, that person is not going to make you whole. They're going to make you codependent, right? So like you need to know who you are before you get into a long-term relationship. And my wife and I are incredibly independent people. I've never been codependent because I'm just like, I've done so much on my life on my own that I don't want to ever, like, I know that I don't ever need to rely on anybody else because whatever situation I'm in, I will figure it out on my own, right? My wife and I are two very independent people who are choosing to create a life together. And we have what I like to say is healthy communication when it comes to situations that need a joint decision, right? But we don't ask permission for the things that we want to do or the things that we would like to do. We literally, like, when she's like, "Hey, I'm doing this, this, and this," and it has to do with her business, and she's going off and doing them, I'm like, "Great, like, cool. Like, let me just make sure, like, so I'm here so I can take care of the freaking animals." But like, other than that, it's
I'll take it all on, honey. It's fine.
yeah. Yeah, but vice versa. I'm like, "Babe, I got all these things lined up, and I got to do these things, and I plan these trips for business and for work." And there's no codependency there. I don't ask permission to do it because there's a level of trust with us that we know when there's something that needs to be brought up for a healthy communicative relationship, then we have that conversation. But there's no, like, the people who are out there, like the women and the men who are out there, and they're like, "Oh, I need to ask my wife if I can go hang out with the boys this weekend." That's codependency. So women like that are asking their husbands and say, or they tell their girlfriends, "Hey, I need to ask my husband if it's okay that I go get my nails done, have a girls' day today." Like, those things, asking permission, that becomes codependency for little things like that. That's not healthy for a relationship. I think the first thing that people need to realize is you have to be an individual and 100% in love with yourself before you get into a long-term relationship, or you will wind up in codependency. Be in love with who you are. Make sure you have your priorities set for what calibrates you, what resets you, the things that you enjoy to do, and don't give those up. And that's the thing is you make that known in the relationship, that there are certain things that you need to fill your cup so you can end up being a better partner in the relationship, because it helps you keep your individuality. And that's where I think everybody needs to start before they do anything. A lot of this, and I'll say one more thing, and then I'll let you jump in here. But like, for instance, I see parents, right? And the parents end up conforming their entire life around a child, right? And I've seen this, that becomes this very, very codependent, like, kind of negative family life, But what I've seen a lot of families do, which I think is beautiful, and I've seen them do this today, is they bring a child in, but the child conforms to their life, right? Like they still do the things that they enjoy doing. They still have the connections with the people they enjoy having connections with. They still do life the way they want to do the life, and the child gets incorporated into that life. Now, obviously, there's small things that change because it's a kid, but for the most part, they incorporate the kid into their existing life. They don't change their entire life for the child. And that's where I see these beautiful relationships and beautiful home lives from a lot of couples that are starting to do that more now. They do that, and it creates more of individuality with them as a couple, and it allows them to not be codependent with their children and with each other. So creating that individuality and holding that first and foremost. People might tell you it's selfish. Cool, that's fine. Selfish isn't bad. Selfish is actually really good, because I can't give back to my wife if I don't fill my cup up 100%. If I'm that half a person that I tell everybody this is my better half, if I'm only half a person all the time, guess what? I'm giving my wife half of a good husband. I'm not giving her a full good husband. So you got to love yourself first.
Well, and we agree so much on the selfish. I like that word. I just wish it didn't have such a negative connotation, because it is like such an important piece that, like, people would just be a lot happier if you were a little more selfish with your time. And I love that you even brought that up about the families and things, because I do work with a lot of moms, and they very quickly lose themselves in being the caregiver but in the meantime, what's the damage that's being done, and like what is the relationship that you're showing your kids that's the most important. So I think that that's really powerful. I want to ask a question, because it is because I know, like, I'm going into the mind of certain listeners, and where is the line of respect? Because there's this, like, yeah, you need to be able to do what you want, and you shouldn't have to ask for this or that. And maybe I just answered it like, you don't have to ask, but like, because some people would be like, well, I do that just because I respect that person. And I hear this a lot, not just with spouses, but in like, well, I'm not my full self around certain people because I respect them. Where do you, like, how, I don't know, talk more.
Yeah, that's great. I like this question because I think there is a line that can be blurred. What I would challenge anybody to do is, before they go ask their partner if they can or can't do something, ask yourself, are you doing it out of obligation, or are you doing it out of you actually wanting to just let them know so they can plan on their schedule? And the other thing is, are you affording them the same opportunity? If you're not affording them the same opportunity to have that time for themselves, then you're abusing that situation. And then that isn't respectful. And it becomes that negative version of selfishness. But when you're looking at it and saying, oh my God, hey, Stacy, I'm going to go out with the boys this weekend. I'm going to go play golf, right? Like we're going to go play golf. It'll be about 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever. Cool. I'm just letting you know that that's what it is. And then you're like, cool. Hey, great, Johnny. I'm going to go out next week and we're going to do a girls' night, and we're going to we're going to hang out at our friend's house, and we're doing this. Cool. You're letting me know, and there's no animosity there. It doesn't mean that I'm asking for permission. I'm letting you know, but there's mutual respect because we're affording each other that time to get connected back with ourselves with whatever it is that we want to do. Right. So it's allowing yourself to realize that if you're taking that time for yourself, you have to also allow the other person, and then also challenging yourself. Am I asking for permission? Right. That's the one thing. Am I asking for permission? Typically, if you're asking for permission, it's not out of respect. It's typically out of obligation, because you feel like you have to get permission from them because you're not confident in keeping your own individuality. But let's say, for the sake of this conversation, that you feel it's out of respect. Ask yourself, am I asking permission out of obligation, or am I asking permission because I think they have something planned that day and I truly just want to make sure I'm not stepping on any plans that they set for us?
Mm. And that's so good. And it's like it's been a hell of a lesson because Andrew and I, like for anybody who doesn't know, we got married. I was 21, he was 23. We've been together since I was 18, he was 20. And so we essentially grew up together, right? And so this was been a really really, really interesting dynamic for us to tackle because like we had to like grow through these things, right? And we've realized that the codependency is it never leads anywhere good, right? And that was like we had to create a partnership. And the partnership to us is just like you said, it is we are two individuals that have individual goals as well as goals together that choose to do life together. Like, but if he leaves or if something happens or God forbid, like we're going to be okay because we are that stable in who we are. I think the conversation that Andrew and I have had, and this is probably something I just want to touch on, is a lot of that codependency, and you may be able to recognize this if in your relationship it's driven by fear. It's driven by this fear that they're going to leave or that you are like there if that person grows too much or too fast in your eyes, like you almost stunt, you want to try to like pull them back or stunt them because you're afraid they're going to outgrow you or your values are going to start to separate or anything like that. So it's just kind of it's definitely been, that's where I tend to notice it a lot is in relationships very quickly, fear can play a huge role into that.
Uh, so if that's is a big issue for people in general, let alone just men, but fear of abandonment is a huge thing. A lot of time that comes from childhood trauma. And then fear of just unworthiness and understanding your capabilities. People, this is where that commonality of thinking you're half a person without the other person. This is where you've never, not you, but I mean the people that are feeling that way. It's where they never found their individuality. I had a question asked to me one time and on a podcast, and they said, well, if you say your wife and you weren't together tomorrow, would you be fine? And I said, well, I'd hate to imagine that situation because I do love her with all my heart, but I would be completely okay. Like I wouldn't have like, and I know and vice versa. I know she'd be 100% okay. Like, and that's not saying that we have any different form of love between one another that any other couple does. It's just the simple fact that we are still independent people. And that if I didn't have her, it would suck at this point because I truly just love her with all my heart, but I'd be perfectly fine. I'd be perfectly fine being a human being on this planet, living the life I wanted to live outside of my marriage because of the fact that we are still independent people and we've always held that. And so that's where that insecurity comes in, though, that fear of abandonment, that fear of being alone, that fear of unworthiness is where a lot of people, they don't feel worthy to experience a successful life on their own because they're not taught that, and they're not taught that there's no limitations for any of us. Our only limitations are the ones that we put on ourselves through our own mind. And a lot of that's been imprinted subconsciously on us. And if we don't really review that and say, wow, I can break through these limitations. I am not my father. I am not my grandfather. I am not my mother. I'm not my grandmother. Like if as long as you realize you are not those people, you're not preconditioned by them. You're not preconditioned by their own limitations or by their societal influences during their generation. You are you, and anything you want to do and anything that you think that you can do, it's your limitations are literally only set by your own mind. So that's where a lot of this comes in.
Well, and I that's so important because it's like this is such an interesting aspect too, is like the first 6 years ish of our life, all we can do, we're little sponges and all we do is soak in what we see. Like we don't have the capability to really decipher like, is that for me? Is that not for me? Is this how it should, like, I want to do it. We just soak in whatever is being shown to us. And then the crazy thing about us, like our brains, is that we have a confirmation bias. So now the next 6 to 7 years of our life, all you do is you seek out things that are going to confirm what you already know. And then it's like the next 7 years, it's so imprinted in you that that becomes your belief systems. It becomes everything about you. And the crazy part about this, and like you said, the unworthiness, all of that, like most of that was placed on you before you had a chance to say, no, that's not for me. I don't agree to that one. I don't subscribe to that one. That's not going to help me in the future, which is why it's so important to be able to take a step back and say, okay, hold on. Is my life where I want it to be? Are my relationships what I want them to be? Is there something different? And the only way for you to create something different in your life is to be able to pull back and start to strip away a lot of that conditioning that was placed on you, which I know is what you and I are so passionate of helping people do, is just like, we want you to become like, get back to who you really are. You don't have to change. You just have to know who you actually are. And we lose that very early on in life. So it's just a process, and a fun process of getting back to that person and kind of letting go of a lot of the things that you were talking about. So now we have to talk about like, how do you start? Like if a guy is listening to this, um, or there's a woman listening to this, because I know again, women tend to get on this like personal growth journey, and then they're like, hey, I would like you to come along with me. But let's just talk to the guys. If there's a guy out there that's like, oh man, this is like resonating hard, like, but how do I get started? Like, what do I do?
Yeah, this is where I found this is where a lot of my passion is. There's so many guys out there that probably do want to get started, and they're kind of being left in the winds because the fact is that there's so many great men doing great men's development work out there. The problem is they're so sometimes high level that when you're stepping foot into this to start off, you just guys just don't understand even the language yet. So the vocabulary is not even there. So they don't understand like where step one is. These guys are trying to get into step one, and the guys they're talking to are at 12 and 15, and they're speaking at 12 and 15. And you're like, man, and so this is where a lot of guys I feel like maybe get deterred as well. So this is really my passion, is actually getting guys, because I am such a basic person. I'm a simpleton, and I need 1, 2, and 3. Like I need steps. I need tactical steps, right? So for guys, the biggest thing is, the first thing you have to realize is that it is okay to actually want to put time into learning you. Like that is okay. Like you have to know that. The second thing is, take that stupid egocentric chip off your shoulder and realize you are no better than anybody else, no matter where you sit in life. I have talked to, I have been part of the most elite units in United States military. I have talked to some of the most elite business moguls and professional athletes out there. And guess what? They're no different from you. Take your stupid chip off your shoulder. Don't think you're some bad dude out there, because you're not. Someone is always better, right? And just understand that you need to start listening, right? And so take that chip off your shoulder and understand that you also need to start listening and investing in yourself psychologically. And the actionable step, here for guys is to now start thinking about your past, or start thinking about your current mindset of what you think a man is. So a lot of that, like you said, was written from our past. So you're going to be thinking about what was given to you. Think about who your biggest role model was in your life. And it doesn't have to be a physical person. Sociologically, a lot of what we've derived from who we are as men is actually from like watching movies and watching TV and magazines and media. A lot of it's actually pieced together from that. So it may be the fact that you really resonate with what a man is supposed to be from all the Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone movies you watched growing up, right? Like, or Clint Eastwood and John Wayne. Like, maybe that's how you developed being a man. That's fine. That's called the normative theory. Most of us actually have that in our repertoire. So if that's fine, but list out those traits and think about where you develop those traits from. And the second step to this is start to list out those traits that just don't actually serve you. Like what is actually not helping you in your life right now, and what doesn't actually resonate with you? You know, what makes you like, oh yeah, that actually, why would I act that way? Like that seems really weird. Like that's not even me. I don't even like that, right? So what we're doing right now is taking out pieces of your current masculine blueprint that aren't even aligned with you. And then what you want to do is you want to start thinking about all the traits out there, and think about men that you respect right now in this world. It could be friends, it could be family, it could be influencers, and start to list those out as part of what you align with, right? And so now, whatever's left over from the past, right, whatever still aligns with you, you basically push that together with the new stuff that you just found out that you like in men that you want to uphold. And that becomes a new blueprint for you. That becomes a man that you're aligned with, right? That's where you start. You have to figure out what you're even aligned with before you can even go anywhere. That's the foundation of everything for us as men.
And it's so important. It's funny because when I talk to, when I am working with women, we talk about the same thing. But it's just in a little bit of a different words of, we have to, like, to figure out who you are, you actually have to first figure out who you're not. And I always joke about the fact that it's like, I don't even know what movie this is. So somebody please tell me what movie this is. But where it's like, the guy gets fired or whatever, and he's like pointing to people and he's like, fuck you, you're cool. Fuck. Okay. Okay. So that's like what you have to literally do with like these different masks that you've been wearing your whole life, is like literally looking through and being like I like to make everything fun. So that's my way of making it fun. Like of being like, yeah, fuck you. That's not working anymore. That like, this isn't working. Like what is no longer serving you, and be willing to give that up. So, okay. I have 2 more questions. This is going long, but I feel like I could talk to you for 3 days because it's fascinating. It's like for my own enjoyment, but I'm sure everybody else is getting something out of it too. So, but okay. So I have 2 more questions for you. The last one is, the second to last, is communication. We've brought this up, right? This is one of the biggest problems in relationships, I would say, but like women, I think we're natural communicators, not in a good way. Trust me, I teach a lot of, like, it took me, Andrew's actually a better communicator than I am. I've learned so many things from him, but it's like superficial stuff. I feel like it's very easy for you guys to communicate, but then when it gets into like a little bit of vulnerability, how do you, like, what can we do as women to open up the space for you to actually talk about your feelings, if that's something that is new to your relationship, and like actually talk about things that are deeper than just simply like, what groceries do we need?
This is a great question. This is also probably one of the toughest questions, because the fact that men aren't going to do something unless unless they've come up with the idea that it's good for them and they've bought into it. You can't tell them what's good for them. The problem that we have with this is
I'm well aware of that one.
It's just a fact. Yeah, my wife is too. It's just a fact. Like that's just what it is. But the problem that we as men struggle with as well is our sense of masculinity is still, if it's still tied up in the old societal expectations of what a man is, it's very hard for us to have those deeper conversations with you, because we feel like you guys are not going to see us as the men that you married again, as that alpha male, or that, that manly man. So there's this separation there that we've created a story. Well, it's incredibly sexy for you guys, right? Like you guys are like, holy shit, he's talking about his feelings. Oh, wow. Yes. Like this is a turn on, right? Turn the crock pot on. I'm good to go. Like guys don't actually make that connection. Guys don't make that connection. We see it as, if I get vulnerable with my wife or my girlfriend, if I allow her to see the emotional side of me, she's going to think that I'm a bitch, and that I'm not a man and she's going to go somewhere else, right? Couldn't be further from the truth, but that's what we think. So for women to open that space up, the best way to do it is when something comes up, maybe even something very small, like don't start big, but when something comes up, like just ask, how did that make you feel? Like that really made me feel this way. How did that make you feel? The thing is, when you get men to start slowly speaking emotions and vulnerability, the more they do it regularly, the more they're going to start doing it and opening up big time, right? But it's like baby steps. It's just give them permission by saying like, wow, that made me feel this way. How did that make you feel? Like when you see something on TV or you hear something on the radio, and then just see how they respond. And most of the time, if it's something small, they'll respond honestly, right? So because they just think it's innocuous. They don't think that there's any big deal behind it, right? But what you're doing is you're allowing them to open their mind to actually assessing what they're feeling and then giving words to it, right? So that's my recommendation. Use small things in everyday life, and then as things go, you can start to talk more about in the relationship how those things make them feel, or asking them in the relationship, how do you feel if we do this, right? Like just trying to get them up more with that vocabulary. So that's where
ladies,
you got to start. It's baby steps.
So don't start with don't start with the hard things. Like we want to like go all in, right? We're like,
yes.
What do you think? Like now that we've talked about one thing, we're like, what do you think the purpose of life is? Like, just don't go in with that. But something that I have learned too, and this just might be a little bit because it's such good advice, is that something I've learned is to shut the fuck up. So like, I say that because we like as women, we're talkers, right? And we like to we don't like dead space. We don't but with men, what I've learned is when I ask Andrew a question and I let him answer and then I don't say anything right away, like I don't come in with my 2 cents or I don't leave that empty space for a second and he'll continue. And I'm like, oh, okay, there's more to be said. Like, don't interrupt them. Don't give them a second to process. Because we just process faster. Like Andrew can never keep up with me. He's like, what conversation are we on? I'm like, I don't even know anymore. But seriously, I joke, but it's serious. You have to shut up. Let them talk. Let them be there. And then I don't know if you would agree with this or not. So I'd love to hear, but something that is always, and you guys, you have to experiment with everything in your own life and see what actually works for you, what works for your relationship. Johnny and I can sit here and tell you what works for us, but you have to experiment and figure out what works for you. So something that works in Andrew and I's relationship is that, and I think I actually got this probably advice from Johnny, is praise them. When it's so funny because we have these expectations of, and this is for anybody in your life, we have these expectations for how we want people to act in our life and how ideally we would like them to act. And then when they act that way or they do the thing, we never say, wow, I loved that you did that. Or like Johnny said, the way to a man's heart is be like, that was really sexy that you talked about your feelings like that. And they'll be like, oh, that's all it takes. But it's just funny. And so in any relationship, because everything Johnny and I are talking about, it applies to your relationship with yourself, with your relationship with everybody in your life, your spouse, whatever. But if somebody does something that really does make you happy or makes you feel more connected to them or gives you whatever it is, you have to tell them that and give them permission to do it again. But we're like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And if we just think it and don't say it out loud, why would they continue to do it? Right? So that was just a little tidbit.
No, it's great information. And that's a great technique. Guys at the end of the day, guys want to feel loved and they want to feel like their spouse is attracted to them. Right. So like whether they say that to you, they all want it. It's exactly why they're on the hunt for women. Like that's why, all these things. It's because they want to be validated in somebody else's eyes because they want to be loved, right? So tell them the things if you ask them to do something or you see something that you love that they're doing and you want to reinforce that kind of behavior, give them that positive affirmation, whether it's, oh my God, I really love that. Or like you said, oh my God, that was freaking hot. Like I wanted to jump your bones when you were sitting on the couch reading that book. Like that was really cool, but you just look so cute. I didn't, right? Like, so it's just like giving them that information, but being genuine about it, because the guys are going to make stories up in the head. Oh, she's just saying that because she loves me, whatever. Like that's my wife. Like, but then slowly it's going to be like, oh no, she really thinks that that's attractive. Like, oh, okay, this is going somewhere. Oh yeah, like maybe this will turn into something else, right? Like, and so it's not baiting them playing with sex, but it's giving them positive affirmations to help them register the fact that you think that they're hot still and that you are attracted to them and you're still in love with them. They want all of those things, whether they say it or not. So give that to them for the things that you really appreciate that they're doing on their journey.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, that's all we want too, right? As women, all we want is to feel loved and know that we're wanted. And actually, I had a dream the other day that Andrew wouldn't have sex with me. I was so mad, like in the dream. It was just a dream. I don't know why that was my dream. I probably have to look that up. But but it's like that's all we want too. And so you have to give what you want, right? Like I know, like things just take a weird turn on this podcast. But anyways, okay. So last question, because this has been so good, is, and I'd love to end with this question because we're all on a journey, right? And if we were perfect or we didn't have anything to learn, we wouldn't be here any longer. So what is a lesson you feel like you're in the middle of learning right now?
Oh man, this is a big one for me right now. It keeps showing up, but it's releasing control of kind of everything. So I being from special operations, like when we planned a mission, I not only planned a mission, but I planned 4 different alternatives to that mission, right? So if something went wrong, I could go to alternative B, and then if something went wrong from that, alternative C, and then D, right? Like so you were practicing fail safes. So there was all of this, there was never out of control because you were like, oh, if something goes wrong, I have 3 other plans that I can go to, right? But in life right now, and especially with business, I don't have that ability right now. And I see this constantly coming up in my life is that, brother, you don't have the ability to control the situation. You need to learn to sit and receive whatever the universe is bringing to you. Like you have to accept the fact that you're doing what you're doing to the best of your capabilities, and whatever's going to come is going to come because no one's going to die. You're just living life at this point, and what you're doing is that you just need to experience the feelings and you need to experience what's happening, learn from it, and then let whatever's going to take form around you in whatever form it's going to take. You can't predict it. You can't control it. And that's what I'm learning right now. It's been a very big lesson for me for probably the last year.
Surrender is hard. Trust me. I am a recovering control freak myself. And again, control comes from this fear, this insecurity, and it causes a lot of worry, right? A lot of worry for no reason, but it's I don't know if you've ever read The Surrender Experiment, but
no,
it's a good book. Yeah. It's by Michael Singer. So he wrote The Untethered Soul, but it's the second book. It's pretty fascinating. So yeah, definitely. I understand that lesson. And I think everybody can resonate with that in some way. And, men, especially because men are just, and there's no, something that's so important for me to help other people understand is that men and women are different for a reason, because we have beautiful differences that make us so special and really beautiful gifts that, if we can come together as a team, we are unstoppable. And it's just so fun to see that. But men are very logical, right? That is again how society has brought up is that you are very logical. There's the 10-step plan. You don't deviate from the 10-step plan. That's all there is. You have to know exactly what's coming. And like, that's not life. Like, we can never know exactly what's coming. I want you to think back in your life and ask yourself, when is the last time something turned out exactly as I thought it was going to? Because it doesn't happen, right? So it's so good. And we're all here just learning the lesson probably right alongside of you. So thank you for sharing that. And there was something else I was going to say, and now we're going to have to cut this out because I don't remember what it was at all.
One of the things too I wanted to mention as well is that just one of the hard things I think a lot of us, and we say it all the time. I've seen it on IG a lot, and I'm sure you have too, Stace. But like, it's all about enjoy the journey. And I know that sounds a lot harder than it really is, but like, seriously, like, your life is simply just a journey. It's not milestones of mountaintops. The mountaintops are brief, but the journey, for good or bad, is actually really what life is about. And so if you stop to remember to be present and enjoy that journey, regardless of where you sit, regardless of what you're struggling with in life, just remember, like, you're still on this side of the dirt. You still have this opportunity to learn and to make life what you would like it to be, and just be present with yourself in those moments, and who's with you, and the animals that are with you, and the space and energy that's with you. But learn to just start enjoying that, because you don't get that back. And when you get to mountaintops, many people look back and regret because they forgot to enjoy the journey. So, it's that's also a lesson I've been learning, because on this entrepreneurial journey, it's really hard to not want to always look at the mountaintop where other people are and say, I want to be there. But they all went through the same stuff you're going through. And so it's like, remember, everything will come as long as you stay consistent and you put, your positive vibrations and energy into it. You're going to attract the life you want. So just stay involved, but stay present.
Yeah, and just don't shoot for like, there is no finish line. So for everybody, like, spoiler, the finish line is one place. There's one way to end. So like, we are like, stop looking for the finish line to every single thing. Like, don't treat life as a finish line, because the reality is, whatever finish line you have put out there, once you get there, you're going to move it. And so just truly, like you said, being able to be present. And I think that's an amazing place to end the interview part. But I know that people are going to want to connect with you more. I know that you have an amazing course that you are opening up for men. Which I already have men in my life that I can't wait to send your way. And yeah, just tell us more. Where can people find you? Tell us more about what you have coming up and how people can just connect with you more.
Oh, thank you, Stace. I just wanted to also just acknowledge you and give you a ton of love, because you're just such a kind person, but you have obviously just a beautiful energy, and what you bring to everybody's life is absolutely amazing. And your readings are just off the charts, by the way. They're so cool. Oh, I love doing
Thank you.
So thank you for this opportunity to serve your community, but also thank you for opening the door for letting me kind of share what I got going on. So if anybody wants to find me, you can find me on IG at johnny.elsasser. That's ELSASSER. Or you can email me at johnny@johnnyelsasser.com. If you're interested in anything, plus you can go to my website, johnnyelsasser.com. It's got pretty much everything that I'm doing on there. We do have a men's course coming up, which is a 12-week course that a good friend of mine, Lucas Smack, and I have put together, and it's absolutely amazing. It's called The Dawn of Masculinity, and we're starting this course to help guys find their childhood traumas, because all of us have it, regardless of what we want to believe. We have some minor build their foundation, and then we help them incorporate tools and visualization, synaptic connections to ensure that they bring that man forward every day after the course, so that they're truly aligned with him, and that they know what that feels like, and they can bring him forward in every aspect of their lives. And they know that when they honor that man, they're actually honoring their highest selves, and they're showing up as their higher selves, which then gives them the ability to live their lives to the highest potential possible. So that's called The Dawn of Masculinity. It opens up May 3rd. That's when we kick off, but we're open right now, taking registration for guys who want to be part of it. we got a good group of dudes that are already involved, and I can't wait for more guys to be there. So yeah.
I am so excited for that because this is like it's so needed. And I'm just pumped. I'm gonna I feel like if I can, like this could be like such a cool like couples thing. So wife can come work with me, man go work with Johnny, come back together at the end of this, and we have got this just so much growth. So you also have an amazing podcast. So if guys just want to start to understand you a little bit more, where can they find you as far as that goes?
So the podcast is The Art of Masculinity. And in The Art of Masculinity, it's a huge passion of mine because we talk about opening vulnerability for guys who are at the most elite levels of kind of their own field on this planet. So from special operations guys to professional athletes to business moguls to podcasters to influencers, we have some of the like most elite people in their own fields that come on there and talk about their struggles and talk about the fact that, you know, life that they've gone through is not perfect, and to get where they're at, it's not all glim and glamour. There was a lot of struggle there, so they open up about where they went through, and that number one, they're not alone, but it also gives guys permission. It's a really great podcast, a platform that I love and love dearly, and have great conversations with other guys in this planet trying to make a change as well.
So good. Well, Johnny, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on. I'm so beyond grateful for you and just to know you and have you in my life, because I truly believe that you challenge me and help make me a better person each day. So thank you for coming on and just sharing your wisdom and your story with with my audience, and just being you.
No, thank you, girl. I appreciate you, and everything is right back at you. I love having you in my life, and you definitely bring out some great things in me and help me learn every day as well. So I appreciate you.
Aw, thank you. Welcome back to the Evolve Beyond Limits post show. So this is the opportunity that I like to take in order to kind of recap something that was really powerful for me in the episode that I want to either elaborate on, and then also give you some tools that you can use in order, like in your own life, because we have to not just listen, we need to implement. So the first thing is that, wow, I loved Johnny's episode. It is, I just re-listened to it actually, because I took so much from it. And the one thing that I wanted to dig a little bit deeper on was this essence of codependency versus a partnership. And we touched on it in the episode, but I really wanted to take a second to dive into it more, because I think that Johnny did such a good job of bringing this to our awareness, because making this shift has seriously been such a huge part of my growth and the growth of my relationship, and honestly, it's still something that we work on, but I want to touch on it. So codependency. When I think of codependency, for me, codependency is really, you tend to count on the other person for your happiness. And I said that in the episode, but one thing that I want to bring up is that it's not only your happiness. You may also believe that they are responsible for your misery or your suffering as well. And so it's not just, it's really that they're responsible for making you feel a certain way, right? And you might count on them to make all decisions for you as well. And you might struggle to make decisions. And so you just hand it off to them so that they can make the decision, because you assume that they're going to do maybe a better job than you. So that is something that can come with codependency. Codependency is that belief that the other person makes you whole, right? And again, we talked about this in the episode, but it's a big thing that if you believe that, you're only 50% of that relationship, then we have to start to shift that, because this might seem really similar, but some people resonate more with it when I say it this way, is that you believe that you're actually a lesser person without them. Or you believe that they are the person that makes your life what it is, right? And so just knowing that, it's also the insecurity, and you have a lot of insecurity and fear around losing them. And you might get really tied up in labels. You view them as mom, dad, husband, wife, breadwinner, caregiver. You tend to look at each other in the eyes of the labels that you're wearing. And then also controlling. And in any aspect can actually be very much a sign of having a codependent relationship. So when it comes to a partnership, I want to talk about the difference between that, because a partnership is really two individuals that choose to be together. You have goals, but those goals, you have separate goals as individuals, and you have separate goals together. That doesn't make sense. You have goals together as well. And so that's a big sign that you are in a partnership. Another thing is that each person is very confident in what they bring to the relationship, right? Flexibility. So it's not so controlling. There's a lot of flexibility because, again, control usually comes from fear. It stems from some sort of fear or insecurity. So that flexibility shows that you're not so afraid of things falling out from underneath you or whatever that looks like, which we'll get into that in a second. And you're open to learning from one another and honoring the fact that you are at different stages of your journey. So this is something men and women we were created different for a reason. And we have fallen into a lot of where it's like a competition. Somebody's trying to be better than the other. Women are better than men, or all this, or men are better than women, but it's not a competition. Like we came to this earth to be two different types of beings. And so if we could learn to honor that in one another instead of fight against it, we could really change the world as couples, because there are things that as women, we're going to be naturally better at doing, and vice versa as far as men go. So can we start to look at each other in that way? It can be really powerful. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story, because that was just kind of like a breakdown of maybe where do you see yourself in that? Where do you see yourself between those two things? And is there work to be done? And if there is, that's not a bad thing. It's just that's an opportunity for you to bring it to your attention and start to work on it. But the reality is that change can be really scary for you, but it can be really, really scary for the people around you. And Andrew and I have been together for 13 years, married for like 11 and a half. We were truly babies when we met. I shared this, I was 18, he was 20. We are both completely different people than we were when we met. And thank God, amen. I don't know, whatever you want to say, but these types of conversations that I'm having with you today are conversations that have actually come up for us a lot lately, because in the last couple of years, we have both seen so much growth that it started to lead somewhere. It could have led somewhere a little bit scary, and a little bit more on a not so great side. But here's the reality. As humans, we're meant to grow and evolve. But so many times, people and couples actually stunt their own growth or the growth of the other person that they love the most, not because they don't believe that they are actually capable of all the amazing things that they're going after or believing or all of that, but because of fear. Fear that that person might outgrow them. Fear that if they change, things will never be the same. But I want to bring to your attention that never be the same isn't always a bad thing, right? Like, thank God Andrew and I are very different than we were 15 years ago, right? Fear of the unknown, fear of losing one another. That can be a big one too. So over last November, Andrew actually officiated one of the most beautiful wedding ceremonies I've ever seen. I might be a little biased, but anyways, there is one piece of that I really need you to hear. And that's this: stop living from a place of fear and start living from a place of love. If we can learn to lead and live with love and not fear, amazing things can happen. And we don't always think about that when it comes to our relationships, but it's really pertinent. And fear is trying to control the future. Love is being where your feet are and enjoying the moments together, wherever they might take you. Fear is protecting your thoughts because of what the other person might think. Love is being vulnerable and being willing to have an open mind and growing together. As individuals, you will change because everyone does. Don't be afraid of the change. Love, understand, work together. If you can do this, you will get to fall deeper in love every single day. Truly, I'm going to leave you with that. And the action step is there's a few different things. One, I actually just got done. I did a couples white light session, and it was really, really powerful. And one of the things that came up is that you have to be committed to pouring just as much time into yourself as you pour into others. And so my challenge for you, my action step for you is a solo-cation. When is the last time you took a vacation completely by yourself? And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I did this about a year and a half ago now, and it was one of the most life-changing experiences of my life. I didn't go far. Honestly, I went to my parents. They own, Andrew's parents, they have a boat on Lake Michigan. And I asked, it was about 2 hours away, and I asked if I could come stay there for 2 days. That's it, 2 days. But I left, and it was one of the most, again, life-changing moments for me, because that time alone allowed me to sort and process and really come up with some of that individuality that I was looking for. And it can just be a super powerful experience. I'm not going to tell you all about my experience because I want you to experience it for yourself. How are you going to make time? How are you going to make time to get away, disconnect, be by yourself for a couple days, and start to really reconnect with your needs, your wants, without anybody else's timeline, anybody else's energy, any of that? Try it out. I want to hear all about it. So if you can, just take a moment. It really, truly means the world to rate and review the podcast. It means so much to me. And it's also an opportunity for you to win the Nintendo Switch. But besides that, I want to hear from you. So text me at 248-206-3431. Fill me in with whatever your biggest takeaway was. Tag myself and Johnny on Instagram. What did you learn from this episode? We want to know. We want to hear it. And share this with one friend who you think might get something out of it. And maybe, your significant other might want to hear this so you can open up some of those conversations. So until next time, remember that this is one of my favorite quotes. There's nothing about a caterpillar that makes you believe it will become a butterfly. It's by R. Buckminster Fuller. And so take that with you, hold on to that, keep loving, keep evolving, because you never know where you might end up.